Okay, we are here to talk about Lady in the Lake, episode 4 on Apple TV Plus, titled Innocence Leaves When You Discover Cruelty, First in Others, Then in Yourself. This episode written by Nambi Kelly and directed once again by Alma Harrell. Our girl Maddie is really going through it in this episode. She meets with Stefan in the hospital, where she learns about him being part of some experiments known as Operation Whitecoat during wars of the past years. Military in these things would send conscientious objectors. We'll talk more about what those experiments were in just a little bit. While she's there and throughout the episode, she has flashbacks of Alan, her high school boyfriend, forcing himself on her when they were young. She ends up taking the information about Stefan to the Baltimore Sun. They run a story about this, which casts doubt on the fact that Stefan was, in fact, Tessie's killer. This gets Maddie a full-time job, but as a responder to letters to the newspaper. At a Hanukkah party, Alan confronts Maddie about getting involved in the investigation of her daughter's murder. And later, Stefan escapes the hospital he is at, confronts Maddie in her own apartment before going into the lake where Tessie was found before police capture him. Speaking of the police, Officer Platt and his partner pursue Duke, who is one of the men responsible for trying to assassinate Myrtle Summer. Duke shoots and kills Platt's partner. Platt then shoots and injures Duke. He is deemed a hero for this, and he is then recommended to be a homicide detective for the Baltimore PD. And our other storyline, Cleo, begins to put her numbers game plan into action, trying to get her friend Dora and others to get out of town with her. She eventually convinces Lucille, her hairdresser friend, to bet on number 366 on Christmas Eve so they can collect all the money. Cleo will give her 20%, and then Cleo and her son are going to get out of town. But Shell Gordon learns that Reggie asked Cleo to do the drop at the Summers, so he tells Reggie he has to take care of her, kill her before Christmas to tie up that loose end. Cleo gets the money from the bet. Reggie tricks her into meeting him and appears that he kills her and then dumps her body in the lake. The exact same time Stefan shows up. We think, see Cleo finally murdered in this episode. We don't actually see it, but I think we can
Yeah.
very fair assumption that it happened. So I don't know. You want to start there or with Maddie? Where should we go?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess we can start there. As you know, it is kind of interesting that they kind of don't show us the event of the murder itself. We see Reggie dumping her body in the lake, which is a repetition, I take it, of what we saw at the beginning of episode one.
Right.
I think before that, last we see her, she's sitting in the park where she's supposed to meet Reggie, and Reggie is kind of, I don't know, anguished about the
Yeah.
idea that he has to kill her.
He's sitting in his car,
So
kind of having a breakdown about what he's going to have to do. Cleo's got a suitcase full of money, and the next we see, she's being dumped in the lake. Yeah.
yeah, so it seems pretty straightforward that Reggie killed her, unless
Well,
they want to throw us a twist
I
sometime
was going to
later.
say, we see someone in a blue coat being dumped in a lake. We don't see Cleo's face when she is dumped. So I don't know that did we see Cleo's face in episode 1? I don't recall.
Uh, man, maybe not. We'd have to go and double
No.
check. That would be a hell of a twist.
Yes, it would.
Um, mm, mm.
I only mention that because of how many times they've mentioned this blue coat in the previous episodes, right? Sort of a defining feature of Cleo. So again, theory, conspiracy theory, whatever, probably not the case, but just to put it out there.
Well, it's interesting. It got me thinking about the voiceover narration, right? And I have always presumed that this was a voiceover of, dead Cleo,
Yep.
but doesn't have to be. Maybe she's not dead, right?
Yeah. Maybe this
Maybe
is the end
Maddie's
of
telling
the.
her story because people think that it was Cleo, but it was actually Dora or something like this.
Is this Cleo and Maddie having a conversation at the end of the series or something? And that's what we're hearing as opposed to a narration. I don't know that any of this is actually true, just throwing it out there.
I sup- it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. Here's all I'm going to say, Ryan. I think it's possible,
Yeah.
but chances are, if they do something like that, I'm going to be sitting here going, "Don't care for it."
Yeah, exactly. No, I
Yeah,
agree.
I was like, I don't like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think Leo is dead at this point, and that Reggie has dumped her body in the lake. It's interesting that this occurs when Stefan is showing up to the lake. Also, which wasn't in episode one. I don't think we realized that at
Mm-mm.
all in episode one, or that Reggie falls and breaks his leg.
Yeah,
He's not doing good. I mean,
that's
that
right.
leg's broken, right? This is like Joe Theismann.
In
There's
the
not much
middle of the
question.
lake in a boat, broken leg. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe he can manage to row out of the lake.
Yeah, eventually.
The arms. Yeah, not in good shape. I guess from what we see during that scene, I kind of thought maybe the cops were going to end up killing Stefan, but I guess not.
Yeah. I thought he was killing
Um,
himself for a moment there. So like, I'm going to drown myself, but it ended up being more like baptism, symbolizing, this sort of rebirth. But
Maybe
yeah,
he
I
tried
thought
to
there was a
drown
bit.
himself.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
true.
if you could
That's
just do that, right? I think at a certain level, biological instinct will kick in and not allow you to just submerge yourself underwater and drown yourself. That's why you got to put some
exactly.
bricks
Yeah.
around your ankles or something.
Yeah, no, we definitely did not see this in the first episode where, I mean, literally at the same time, Reggie is dumping Cleo, presumably, and hiding from the police because he sees them coming, tracking down Stefan, who has escaped, confronted Maddie, and run directly to this lake, which really leads me to think there's something about this lake that we're going to learn about in future episodes of whether it's got some sort of, they keep talking about connections or some mysticism
Yeah.
to it, whatever it is, there's something about this lake.
Yeah, I mean, what we have gotten is apparently this is a spot where young men and women will go to have sexy time, or I don't
Do what
know.
they do. Yeah.
It, there's a hookup spot, and that Stefan would go and watch them, right?
Yes.
And thus we get the flashback to Maddie and Alan. I do have something of a question related to that, and then the flashbacks we saw before. This is the same question as before. What was going on there? Because it seemed
Yeah.
like the flashback we saw before was with Alan's father. I
Yeah.
think it's very quick. I had to like pause, screen grab, kind of, like, is that the same character? Um, so what was going on there and how does that fit in? And it has, there's, I'm trying to be careful. Um, did, were Matt, did, I don't know what term to use, Ryan. Um, sex happen there? The penetration happen in the scene? She's
I,
saying,
I
just rub
I
against
get
my
the
breast and all of
impression,
that.
yeah, I get the impression no, which leads more to I think the theory that we learned last week that Milton's not the father. We anticipated or predicted that she had some sort of hookup with Alan's father, so therefore Seth's father is also Alan's father. Doesn't seem like she wants anything to do sexually, physically with Alan because he is really trying to force himself on her. Um, so I think, yeah, I'm sort of left with the deduction that it's Alan's father is the one that she's been intimate with.
Yeah. And this is part of why I was struggling with what word to use, to be clear,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it does seem um like it's a sexual assault, I would say,
Right.
one way
That's
or
that's what it
another.
seemed like to me, but he did not, you know, to put it bluntly, he did not penetrate her.
I think, okay. Guys,
Yeah.
sorry,
It-
people
It's,
listening. I don't know.
it's
But
the
like
that was
the
the vision.
underlying question related to it is who is Seth's father
Yeah.
biologically, right? Um
Yeah, and it seemed very purposeful to have the line, you can, I think she says, you can rub yourself over my clothes, and that's what he ends up doing. So I think that was very intentional of we want there to be no ambiguity about who, if we ever uncover who Seth's father is, who that might be.
yeah. I was a little less sure though. I don't know. Like
Yeah. We'll see.
whether I don't know. He could whether he abided by her, there. Either way, it seems like he gets up and said, I don't want to see you ever again.
Yeah.
So, Alan's an asshole. He probably killed his daughter.
Right.
What do you think about that? This is my theory. Alan killed his daughter. Alan killed Tessie.
So let me just say about Alan. So we see Alan really going for it. I mean, going for the Emmy there at the Hanukkah scene, right? Where he's just on top of Maddie for pursuing the story, for talking about Tessie, for all of this. Alan, who's played by, I believe his name is Cornsweet, David Cornsweet. Fun fact, he is James Gunn's Superman, so he is Superman next year.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is going to be a different look at this guy. He's like the 13th lead on the show, but he's going to be Superman next year. Um, yeah, that sort of violent outburst that happened at the Hanukkah party, that put him at the top of my suspicion list. That something happened, didn't get his way. We've seen him as a teenager or young man. Something happened, and it would not surprise me if that ends up being part of the twist of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he's mad. He's like, we effectively pinned it on this weirdo Stefan guy, and now you're calling things into question. I mean, I suppose he could be upset like that, even though it doesn't necessarily mean he's guilty. You know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
um definitely made me suspicious of him and don't care for that guy.
No, not at all.
Um the other bit of evidence there, right, would be that, why was Tessie taken to that spot and so on, right?
Yeah,
Um why was Maddie drawn to look for her at that spot? Did she
yeah.
already suspect?
That's a question Stefan has. What drew you to that place? Yeah, that specific spot of the lake.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Speaking of Stefan, you mentioned his escape,
Hmm.
which I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny, and I don't know if that's bad of me, but how he lights the guard on fire.
Yeah, has a flammable
Um,
jacket that he had on.
Although that kind of material is super flammable, right? I don't know why he had a lighter. I guess they
Yeah.
just weren't real
Did they
good at
show
security.
they show that he took that from someone? I want to say that maybe he, Hannibal Lecter that thing where, instead of taking a paperclip, he took a lighter from somebody at some point. I want to say maybe that was there, but I didn't go back and check.
Yeah, I wondered that too. If we saw where he got the lighter, I'm not positive. We might have.
Yeah.
Either way, doesn't seem like great security at this mental hospital if he's able
Yeah.
to get a lighter.
Yeah.
Um, Set this. I do feel bad for the random guard being set on fire.
Yeah, really.
But I just thought it was kind of humorous thing in a dark way. Um, Operation Whitecoat. So, of course, being who I am, I immediately looked this up and determined it's entirely a real thing.
Hmm.
And this would have completely made sense. They actually used a lot of Seventh day Adventists and um, conscientious objectors, or that was
Yeah.
like the primary thing. Did you look at the Wikipedia? I didn't go much further than that. But what I
Yeah, I
did
mean,
find kind of interesting about the Wikipedia was the tone, I guess.
yeah, Seventh-day Adventists being admitted pacifists, often objectors to war, and I don't say dodgers, but going to avoid going to war if they were drafted, and so they often became the people as a part of this Operation White Coat, which lasted decades. It seemed like that was a surprise to me.
Or at least like a decade.
Yeah, I
So I've got the link right here to revisit.
think it said 54 to 73, so yeah, a couple of decades.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, what part of what I find striking is, at least if you look at the Wikipedia page, it's all framed as they volunteered to do this,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they're conscientious objectors, but volunteered and of their own free will became part of
Hmm.
Operation Whitecoat, which I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Did they know what they signed up for? I mean, this is
Yeah,
because if you look at what they were doing, I mean, in terms of the ethics of um, human experiments and test
yeah.
subjects and all that, this is awful.
Yeah. To me,
This
it was
is
either a misrepresentation of what the experiments were going to be, or they agreed to it under the threat of imprisonment or some other punishment if they didn't do it.
right. So is it really voluntary?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's maybe I haven't quite got on the detail side. If people haven't looked into this, the purpose of the program, which they basically represent here in Lady in the Lake, they show us. But if it wasn't clear what you were being shown,
Right.
they were testing basically bioweapons or things they thought might be used as bioweapons on these test subjects like Stefan in the show.
Right.
Um, I don't know, to see what happens, to see if they can treat it, so it's like they're giving people a disease and then giving them antibiotics.
Yep. Yep. Exposing them to some elements, compounds, whatever. They're not sure what they do, see what the effects are, then try to treat it. Yeah, it was quite horrific.
Officially, they claim no one died.
Yes.
Eh, I don't know. It's just like putting on my Mulder hat a little bit. I don't know. I mean, this
Yeah.
is so like, but it's interesting because it does seem within the context of the show, this was by no means widely known or anything like that. I mean,
Right.
obviously, there's a certain element of scandal to the idea of something like this that's visceral, I think. You're like, well, what do you mean they're testing bioweapons on human beings in Maryland, right? So it's like right down the road. Um, but yeah, I just thought part of what I thought was interesting about it was reading about it a little bit. It seems like at this point, completely known that this happened and totally not apologizing for it.
Yes, exactly. But to your point, it becomes the focal point of Maddie's story. They sort of break
Mhm.
this wide open, and no one else has had access to this or knowledge of it. And this is what becomes the story, as opposed to, I guess, Tessie's family wanting it to remain on Stefan, the killer. She sort of said, "Well, who knows?" Based on what have learned now.
Right. And I mean, of course, the fact that he was a subject in Operation Whitecoat, that doesn't mean he's innocent either.
Right.
You could understand why Tessie's family is upset if, you're feeling like the story is garnering sympathy for the guy who killed Tessie, and things like that. But I guess this is part of what is interesting about the show, but where I'm starting to feel the slightest bit frustrated here, a little
Mm.
bit more than halfway through, is in not getting new information about those mysteries at the
Yeah.
site. You
Yeah.
know, we don't
Yeah.
even really go ahead.
I say at some point you have to start tying up the mystery instead of expanding the mystery. And only has 7 episodes here, three left. There are a lot of loose ends. We may have introduced more. We had this conversation about Alan. We had this conversation about Cleo. You've got to, turn the corner and bring it back around, presumably to how you want to end this thing. So introducing this, I mean, maybe that's sort of the peak of the mountain here, and we're going to go downhill from there and sort of picking up some speed on this.
Yeah, I guess the main thing was I was kind of expecting when Maddie sat down to talk to Stefan that we would at least get something from him
Hmm.
that related to Tessie's death
And we seemingly got nothing.
beyond him saying he didn't do it.
Right, right.
And that's kind of all we got. I'm willing to believe he didn't do it. I think maybe he didn't do it, but we did
Yeah,
see that he was there with her in the store. That's the last time we saw her alive, other than Santa Claus. Gotta mention Santa. So, like, some hint from Stefan, some hint of anything that might fill in the gap in relation to the Santa Claus scene or something I was hoping for, and we just really don't get it. He just
we
says
really.
he didn't kill Tessie, and then we end up talking about Operation Whitecoat, and that's it.
We got that admission, or I guess lack of admission. We got his story, and also in the same episode, Reggie admitting to Shell, "I was there in that store the same time as the girl. I wanted to take heat off of us. That's why I did what I did with Cleo." So almost adding to the, okay, well, you were there. Yes, did you have something to do with this? So yeah, there's been not much sort of forward trajectory on answering that question.
Yeah, not really at all. I mean, I don't think Reggie had anything to do with it. We
Yeah,
don't know for sure, but it doesn't seem to me like he did.
yeah,
Um, when he learned that the fish store was involved, he flushed the fish that he bought at the store,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't really think that Reggie was involved there, but we don't know.
Yeah.
Um, to what extent was Stefan involved? Yeah, we're just not really getting new information, and hopefully that will change as we move forward. Because as you mentioned, there are only 3 episodes left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, let's see. We hit on most of these things. So you mentioned, any thoughts about what happens with Platt? I think it's relatively self-contained. You mentioned they chase down Duke, his partner, whose name I don't know. I didn't
I
take a
can't
note of his
remember.
partner's name. Sorry, guy. Um, ends up getting shot and killed. I guess I do want to mention the wrinkle that Platt's partner was the police officer that Shell was paying.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, ultimately, that money might have been going to the police chief or something, who I don't think we've met, but he was the contact person,
Yeah.
such that when they're watching the news, Shell's crony or whatever says, "Well, I couldn't have been the other guy," So there is that wrinkle here that
Yeah, I
factors
find
in.
myself wondering. It looks like his name is Officer Percy Davis, played by David Johnson III. So there's
All right,
your credit for that. But I do find myself
R.I.P.
wondering, besides just being a comfort in in Maddie's bed, what role is Officer Platt going to play going forward? Are he and Maddie going to solve some mysteries together? They seem to kind of stop each other talking about these things whenever the other one brings it up, right? Platt says, "Can we just leave it at that?" Maddie didn't want to give a lot of information. I don't know. Maybe they're going to get together and solve some of these mysteries.
Yes, here's something. I should have made a note. There's another cop. Yeah, early. She's on the IMDb up. Who the other cop, the one who was hitting on Judith or whatever last week, sees Platt leaving Maddie's apartment.
Yes, that's right.
And
That's right.
there's also something in the narration from Cleo about how things aren't going to work out well for Officer Platt. She's always kind of a little cryptic. Who knows
Yeah,
exactly what this means?
yeah,
But it makes me imagine that, okay, well, now you've got the other cop who knows about Platt's relationship with Maddie, which is illegal.
yes, absolutely.
And me, so maybe that guy's also crooked and on the take, and that as Platt and Maddie investigate Cleo's death, maybe that's what's going to come back and bite them and stymie their investigation. Because
Yeah, I do.
presumably that would be the thing they work on together, right? Platt knows Cleo, he'll care about this, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, they'll work on, and we'll get to the title of the next episode. It seems like they're going to move towards that investigation in episode 5 here. I think you may be on the right track here that they might investigate that together, but this other officer who may be looking for on Shell Gordon's orders to look for something that they can turn Officer Platt, right? If they lost the guy that was giving them the money, we need to turn somebody over to our side. So yeah, there's a lot of ways this can go wrong for Platt and Maddie as they presumably start to look into Cleo.
Yeah, right. Or maybe, perhaps coerce him towards dropping it. You
Yeah,
can't look into this anymore, or
yeah.
else we're going to expose this illicit relationship and so on. Because they did seed that in this episode too, right? They can't go to the Colts game together or
Yeah.
separately and meet up there because
Yeah.
of I didn't look
Yes.
up
Yes.
the
The Colts used to be in Baltimore, for those that did not know
oh yeah, I just took that for granted.
that.
I was just saying I didn't look up the precise status of the laws in 1968 about interracial
Right.
couples, but
Right. Exactly.
that's what we're referring to. You can get in trouble. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Anything else we want to hit on here?
Yeah, I think those were
More or less
the
covered
high
it.
points. It does, to your point, I do hope or expect they sort of turn a corner. In this episode, episode 5 is titled "Every Time Someone Turns Up Dead in That Lake, It Does Seem to Lead to You." So, which tells me, I think, two things. Number one, that Maddie's involved. That's the you in this sentence. And then someone turning up dead in that lake would be Cleo, or presumably Cleo, but someone's dead in that lake right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So we finally gotten back to the beginning, as it were.
Yeah.
Better Lady in the Lake. It's an interesting question. Again, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that until you mentioned it at the beginning of our conversation here today. That do we know for sure that it is Cleo as
Yeah.
opposed to woman in blue coat?
I
I have to go
presume,
back and double check at the beginning of episode one where we see her face. I
yeah.
don't think we do though.
I don't think we do either, but I presume we will find out one way or another in episode 5. Having not watched ahead, I presume we will figure that out. We'll see.
Yeah, for it to make sense, it really does kind of have to be Cleo. So I'm not putting a lot of weight on this
No,
speculative theory,
no.
but
7% chance it's not Cleo.
yeah, very small, but less than 7. 1% chance. Oh, another quick note. Someone was nice enough to comment in on the YouTube comments for our podcast last week. We were talking about the numbers game, and
Yeah.
was saying how it seems like there should be some shorter odds
Right.
possibilities. So apparently there are on the numbers game. You can run the numbers boxed. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you play the
Oh,
pick
okay.
three, you can take it straight or boxed, meaning
Yes.
like they could be in any order.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you
And so
don't
it really is just like an
yeah.
illicit pick three lottery game.
Yeah. As opposed to you getting the numbers in order plus the Powerball or the bonus number in the bonus box. Just got all the numbers. Yeah. I hear it. Okay. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, of course. And it is confirmed in this episode the numbers game is rigged.
Yes. Yes.
We kind of already knew that. We didn't already know that. But anyway, yeah. So all right, good. So we'll be back next week to talk about episode 5. Hopefully you'll join us if you enjoyed the podcast. Please do leave a good rating, leave a good review, like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, leave a comment, all that good stuff. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media. Look for TV Obsessive, whether on X or Facebook. What else? In Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. And yeah, check out tvobsessive.com and read some articles. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Looking forward to it. See you then.